All right. Let's get ready, everybody. We getting ready to start. We've got our speaker in the house. It's going to be good. You heard him a couple of weeks ago, and he's coming back for part 2. It's going to be good. I'm not going to do announcements till afterwards, so we can jump right into this. So without further ado, let's give it up for Larry.
All right. So a couple of things we're going to go over are, because I know there's some people in there, we're just going to review a little bit, and talk about a little bit what we didn't cover, what we did cover. But then we're just going to have maybe 11 points, I think. I think that's what I have. But we're going to cover things like the importance of banks, credit scores, credit cards, buying a car. We talked about that a little bit. Housing, job skills, how to improve yourself for an employer, without even knowing it, that you're doing it. It's really good. Mentally strong, what do mentally strong people do to handle things? So there's just there's some things like that, because I think the mental side of life seems to be getting more difficult every day. And I'll leave the last one, I'll leave that for the end. First of all, anybody have any questions from last time I was here? It's about a month ago. Everybody's got their lives in order and, money in the bank. We talked about emergency funds. Remember that, guys? How much money should we have, like an emergency fund, if you can get it? What's the goal? Any idea?
3 months' wage?
3 months of payments for emergency, yes, for sure. So try to have that for a living standpoint. That's kind of the rule of thumb. So figure out what it is. You got a car payment to do. You got rent to pay if you're sharing rent or whatever like that. Try to get that. Your first criteria should be, what should I save for? Should I invest or should I? No, get a couple funds together first. You want an emergency fund, because less than half of the people in the United States can put $1,000 together in 30 days. Okay? So you have a transmission problem on your car or something, it's a big deal, So that's why you have, all these different places for the loans and so on and so forth. And what does that do? Then you add on the interest and, so on and so forth. So, what I really kind of think is extremely important, pay yourself first, okay? Put it in a fund where you don't touch it, okay? Who's more important you should pay every month? You. If you stop, there ain't gonna be no more money for anything. So if you pay yourself, budget it in. Maybe you can't have the few extra cups of coffee at Starbucks. Maybe you can't have a few different things, but what is more important? That 1 or 2 times like that, or your livelihood? It doesn't mean you're still not going to have issues, that are bigger than that or whatever, but that'll help you get through a lot of the issues. So try to have $1,000 in that emergency fund, okay? Minimum, if you can. Put that on your list. That's going to be something you'll use for the rest of your life, especially if you are in a relationship, and you got one person, you're the saver, they're not, or vice versa. It's important that you're on the same page, and you think about money the same way. It's not bad to talk about money. Everybody kind of money is. I have charities that I work with all the time, and they don't talk about the volunteers they have because they're afraid somebody's going to take them, and they don't talk about who their donors are. They kind of keep them all like this. Don't be afraid to. Any problem anybody's had in this room with money, somebody else has had. I've had a lot of them, I had the bank try to take all my properties away one time. That'll get your attention. Those kind of things. So don't be afraid to talk about it. We're doing a sign-in sheet. Basically, the only thing for that, I got a few more handouts that I couldn't get done that I was going to send, but feel free to drop me a line and say, hey, Larry, can we talk? Be happy to, okay? I'm not going to embarrass anybody here like, what's your credit score? 492 or 333 or what? I don't care. I'm not trying to do that. I'm just trying to you be aware of it, how you have to take care of that or try to resolve that, because you're not going to be able to buy a house. You're not going to be able to buy a car. If you get a car, it's going to be at one of those high interest places, and you're going to pay up to about here. And it's not going to be a very good situation. So we're going to talk about that a little bit too. And we could talk about, I guess you might call me an entrepreneur or whatever, but we could talk about that. But these things are more important first. Okay, you got to walk before you can run, and so we've got to get you stabilized from that standpoint first. So, anybody have any questions from what we talked about before, just briefly?
So when you
Yes.
say pay yourself, you're talking about putting that money into the emergency fund?
I think yes. Emergency fund or savings, and then if you get once you get more than that 1,000, maybe after 5-6 months, okay, you've paid yourself that particular spot. Then you might have a setback. You might have to pay something or whatever, but try not to touch it. That should be your precious, your fallback plan, okay? Because you'll be shocked how much. If you have a safety net like that, it'll just make you feel better about doing anything with money. Because you go, okay, well, I got that covered. If my boss doesn't like the way I look on Monday morning, and they fire me or something, hey, I've got this 3-month cushion. I can find a job. I'm employable, all that kind of stuff. Those are kind of the critical things we wanted to talk about. And because I think that's the ones you're going to face the most. I know the age cutoff is like 30 or whatever. Well, I used to work for somebody, and actually as I got to Florida, they moved me from Michigan to Florida. I don't know if anybody knows where Lake Bernadette is, out in the Zephyr Hills area. Well, I put all the roads and stuff in the first phase. Well, when I came down here, I was supposed to also own, they promised me a percentage of the place, and I was supposed to own 15%. Well, I was kind of stubborn. I kept asking, where's that paperwork? Where's that paperwork? And finally, they just decided they didn't need me. And so they fired me. So that's the first and the last time that I was fired. I haven't had a job since. So that goes back, I won't even say how long, a long time. So I basically been working for myself in real estate for all these other years, but it did teach me a skill, and I earned more the next year than I ever earned with them. So sometimes you say, oh, that's the worst thing that could happen. Sometimes it's the best thing. Sometimes it's a kick to get. You might not have made that move otherwise. So sometimes we need a kick in the butt, to make a move. And so from the standpoint of having that safety net, and I think you'll find that is low, but just think about it. If you had that safety net and you had $1,000 in the thing, you'd be ahead of half of the population. What does that say? That says we're in trouble with a lot of it. So, so if you have that, you're already ahead of the game, all right? And, they have one little, when you get a house, for example, and you see the house prices have gone up dramatically here in the last, 2.5, 3 years. And then you see the prices and you see a husband and wife or, two people going together in on a house, and they put 5% down and then 95% financed, and they're up to here, with debt, because they probably both have cars. They got payments on those too. So now they financed it, and they can make their payments, They maybe had to use all the emergency fund to get the down payment together, and then what happens? One gets laid off, and then that's when the things start spiraling. So never really put yourself that lean if you can. I mean, it's very difficult. I mean, everybody, I talk people out of deals when they try to buy from me. Sometimes I says, you really don't want to go out that deep on a house. Because what does a house do? Everybody wants a beautiful house, no question. The problem with a beautiful house, it's not only the monthly payment, okay, but it's also the maintenance, the taxes, the insurance. Insurance is kind of so crazy now. So you have all of these things added onto that price of a house, and how much income does it bring into you? Zero. Okay, so everything you do is coming out of your pocket and nothing in. So they have a thing called bad debt and good debt. Bad debt would be on your house, and you think that'd be good, but it's not because it doesn't pay for itself. But now if I rented him a house and he's making my payments, I'm getting equity built up in this house and he's making all my payments, and at the end of a certain period of time, I'm gonna have a free and clear house. You see what I'm thinking about from a standpoint? I want you to look at something when you talk about, is it good debt or bad debt? And you can read about it in Rich Dad, Poor Dad, if you haven't read that one. It's a really good little book. I've given it out. It's really simple to read. It's probably ninth grade, probably when you're 9 years old, you can probably start reading it. But it's very common sense as far as how you're relating to it or whatever. So think about that from a standpoint of how you're going to take care of yourself. 97% of the population relies on Social Security. Really wasn't always for that. It was kind of like an emergency gap measure when it was first passed back in the day. But 97%, so how many, that only leaves 3% of the rest of the population. You know, I feel kind of blessed because I paid in and I'm collecting some. I'm not sure how much you guys are going to collect. You know, I don't know. I don't know how they're going to do it. You know, because they, unfortunately, when they had this big cushion and a lot of money in it, they tapped it for other reasons. And so they took money out of Social Security and spent it on war and all kinds of other stuff back in the day. So those are the kind of things, so you don't want to rely on that as being your only source. Why do you think people are working past 65 now? You have more and more before. You know, 10 years ago, 65, you were out. You were ready to retire. So that's not probably gonna, it'll be there, but it's not gonna provide you a great lifestyle. You know, it might provide you enough to get by, but it should supplement what you do. Anybody have an idea, you understand what I'm trying to say? So I want if you grasp a few things, we want to make sure on the emergency kind of fund, that kind of scenario, to help you through the rough times scenario, to be able to just be able to handle the ups and downs of life. Life doesn't go like this, you know. You got a better job, nicer income, better job, nicer house, nice. You know, it doesn't go straight. It goes like this, kind of like the stock market. You know, so nothing goes straight up. So you're going to have times when you're going to need to fall back on, and so on. And I would say if you're in a relationship or going to get in a relationship, get on the same page with that person. Don't be afraid to talk about it. You know, it's important. You know, because over 50% of the problems are caused because of talk about finances. You know, the biggest issues that come between a couple. You know, so because the money one's always out there. Why don't we have any money? And it's not only from how much you make, it's almost how much you spend. You know, the guy might say, "Oh, why'd you buy that new dress?" But then he went out and bought a boat. You know, so I mean, it's like, who knows? You know, if you're not on the same thing about spending, it's going to be really a conflict. You know, especially with the struggle, and then you have kids or whatever. But just keep that in mind down the road. So we're going to now. That was kind of just like a wide spread of brush strokes on life. But so we're going to talk about the importance of banks. How many have a checking account? Okay. How many balance their checking account? Balance it, you know, so you know that they did it right. It's important. I've caught mistakes, you know, before. I've had money taken out of my account if I didn't check it or whatever. So it's important to be able to do that. I would advise that you have a checking and a savings account. So which banks do you guys deal with?
Truist.
Huh?
Truist.
Truist. Oh, my favorite.
Charles Schwab.
Huh?
Charles Schwab.
Charles Schwab. Anybody else? Chase. Okay. Suncoast, the credit union. Okay, right. Anybody over here?
Bank of America.
Bank of America.
Growth Financial.
Growth Financial. Okay.
Truist.
Silent majority of you? No.
Same Truist.
Same. Well, I told you before, a bank tried to take everything from me at one time. That was Mr. Truist. That was actually Sunbank back in the day. And they have this thing about their teeth that they can keep them together but still lie through them. It's pretty amazing thing that they do. But I had a situation where there was a big scandal kind of thing that was in Texas, and it kind of blown over into here. It was called the S&L crisis back in the day. And so basically, if you had a loan with them, they get real nervous. The bank, gets real nervous and thinking, oh, we're next in Florida or whatever. So they wanted more down. It'd be like, you have a nice loan on your house, and they come and say, oh, yeah, you got that one loan, but we think you should put another 10% down. Well, yeah, who's got that? You barely have your emergency fund and everything else, without being able to do that. So they came and they wanted more down. I used to own some vacant land around. It's like where you see the Ford dealership and a few things like that. We had some of the vacant land. I put some partnership things around. So, but when you come and you tell you got to restructure everything and you can't do it, it became very tough. We finally worked out, which I thought we worked it out. And they said, well, come in on, this is after about a month and a half. They said, come in on Wednesday and we'll sign the paperwork. The guy I've been talking to the whole time. So I call in Monday to find out what time he wants me on that Wednesday. And he doesn't work here anymore, and you don't have an agreement. And they had filed foreclosure proceedings 3 weeks prior without any kind of notice. So that's how, the banks are out for the banks. Okay, it's a business. They're really happy and they smile a lot at you when times are good. That's the best time to borrow money from them. They're really, really that way. But the thing I heard mostly, I did hear Growth Credit Union, and I heard Suncoast, I think. And the credit unions are really good. You really should look into them if you can get them. They have some pretty different loan things and some housing and some cars and that are really kind of favorable. The other banks, I'll tell you why. So I heard Truist, I heard Bank of America, my own firm, Sun America, Bank of America, let's see, what else did I hear? Chase, they're big banks, okay? You're a number to them. That's all you are, okay? You might know somebody that works there, and they're really friendly, but they could be somebody else tomorrow. They have no say. If you go to a branch office, they have no say over should you get a loan or not. They might have this much say. And then it goes to a home office before they check everything back here. And in commercial, it was even harder because you go to one group and then you go to this group and then it goes to another group in Orlando who doesn't know me from anyone. And then they go ahead and review it again, and they always would change the thing like 5%, always, just to protect their job, I think. But that's why I say you want to go to banks that basically there are 5 branches or less. Because why? Because you can go in the main branch and somebody knows your name. It's kind of like the show Cheers. You want somebody who knows who you are. You want somebody to know how hard you're trying, that you are going to pay your bills, that you are, you've been a customer of theirs for 10 years, and not just on paper. You are somebody that they know. And something like that. It's very important. So I learned that at another seminar well after I had the other issue. So I would say, and you can look in, you just look how many branches they have, and if they have like 5 or under, I mean, I'm not going to quibble about 6, but if it's close to that, that means they're a smaller bank. They're what they call a community bank, and there are less and less and less of them all the time. But you don't want somebody dictating like Wells Fargo did, for example, and dictated and had all these things, and then they end up paying multi-millions back in fines, for something they did wrong. It doesn't come back to you. It just goes to the different agencies and so on. You never see any of it. And so there's just different, from when you're talking to a bank, don't be afraid. There's a place where you can go in there and talk to them. Maybe you have to get a wire. And now the wire comes in, with no consequences. It's a big deal to you, getting something done like that. Maybe you need something done with your student loan. Maybe they can give you some guidance there. Or if you go to a Chase, you're going to take number 38, and you're going to go in there, and from the standpoint, you're really not going to get your answers. So keep that in mind. I think you should have a checking account and a savings account. Your emergencies should go in your savings. I wouldn't commingle it if you can. How many use the ATM? How many in here use the ATM? Okay, and they're doing a lot of changes to that. There's less of them, and there's more coming in different places. They're going through some changes, so I don't know how that's going to weed out some. But I think they're still going to have some. I know they're kind of relocating some in in Pasco County and so on and so forth. How many times have I used an ATM? Once. No, twice. Once to try to see if it worked, make sure it worked. And the second time, because how much does it cost you? How much does it cost you for a transaction? Zero, okay. Not at all zero though, so you have fees and stuff like that too from that standpoint. A lot of them are much bigger fees, $2, $3, $4, but it's going to get even tougher with the funds from that standpoint. But I just think it's from a standpoint of it's getting, the ones that charge zero are probably going to change only because of the cost. And so that's why you see a lot of changes now. I see banks closing them. And it's only because I know that they are changing, because they've told me they're going to change it. Do you use the ATM because you don't want to hold the cash? If you hold cash in your pocket, who has a harder time not spending it? If you have cash or if you have a debit card, which one's easier? About the same? I know some people, cash burns a hole in their pocket and they think there's always extra bonus and it's not an issue. Any thought about that at all? Or?
It's really easy to tap the card.
Tap's really easy, yes, for sure.
Way too easy.
Yep. And with the cost too of the transaction, and and the small part of it too. So, anyways, I'm really just kind of saying it. So think about the bank that you're working with. Get to be a person. Get to be a person again. Okay, it's important. It'll help you no matter what you do down the road. Maybe you want to have a little business down the road. Maybe you're going to need some advice there, some financing. Maybe you're just under the score for where the house would be financed. But now they know you, and they know that you pay the bills, because a lot of these guys they're involved with whether it be Rocket or any of those, they're involved can be involved in the transaction too. Credit score. Who knows their credit score? Higher. Let's see, higher. How many? So about half. Okay. So what do you guys think about credit scores? What do you think? Are they important, or why are they important?
Generally speaking, opens up a lot of doors for you. Having a lower credit score can limit where you can live, what you can afford to buy, what you can afford to eventually get a loan on. Employers can have that information because it's publicly available. Anyone, not just employers, actually. It's just a very important thing to be aware of and thing to be working on.
Mm-hmm. Everybody understand that? And it's not only important there, but it's also important maybe getting a job. They get your credit score and say low, so maybe you're not a good candidate to hire, because if you treat your own score this way, what are you going to do to us? Or are you going to be a problem because of that low score in certain ways or whatever? So I would say, what is a good score? What's a good score? Yeah, 650 up, yeah, I would say. I think 630, 640 is where you got to kind of be to get a house kind of scenario, minimum. But you got to remember too that you get the higher your score, the better it would be to get that loan. And the lower the score, it's going to cost you something. They're going to be less likely to give you a better interest rate. So it's not like, here's the interest rate at 6%, and it's the same thing if you're 630 or if you're 830, okay? It's not. Okay, so they want to get their money back, because a bank is there for one purpose. They're there to put the money out, make money on it. They don't care, what color your car is. They don't care how big your lot is. They just want to make sure if they loan the money out, they get paid back. And so I think from a standpoint, and I'm not going to ask things like what's everybody's score, but you should be able. There's 3 credit agencies that you can check on, and you can go to any of them, and you can get your credit score for free, okay? At least once a year minimum. So check your score, check your credit, check your, your number, and you go ahead and put your Social Security number in there. It'll give it to you. It's, I think, Trans-American, Experian, and there's a third one too. Equifax. There you go. So see, I don't look at it much anymore. I don't follow my own medicine, but the bank tells me if it's a problem. But basically, sometimes you don't know that's a problem. It'll tell you things like when you pull up your credit score, it'll tell you like, oh, that payment 4 months ago didn't get there on time, and there was a late fee kind of scenario, and there's a warning out there for this. Or maybe in my case, I was traveling a lot for a period of time there and doing a lot of things abroad, and so my credit card came, and I opened one up. The worst one I ever had was I opened up a credit card. I think it was Kohl's of all places. One of those 10%. You save 10% if you do it today kind of scenario, and I did, and I forgot to pay it because I didn't put it on my list, and then it just it just exploded my credit. It took me a while to get rid of that. So it's, when you get something like that, give it attention, okay? That is your lifeline to a better world, okay? Better world as far as being able to finance, because not everybody here is going to be able to write a check for everything that they need or want during that time. And when don't you use a credit card, or when don't you use? I mean, you can use a debit card too, but that's your own. I actually recommend credit cards over debit cards, and the reason being, unless you have a budget, unless you're bad budgeting or whatever, or you spend a lot more than you have. But if you have a credit card, you can stop that thing immediately. It's not always easy to do on a debit card, and sometimes you'll lose more money if that thing gets in the wrong hands, as opposed to a credit card. So that'd be the only thing I kind of concerned about there. So check your credit score at least once a year, at least. Check it. What's wrong with my score? Why is that there? How can I improve it? How can you improve your credit score? Anybody know? Any ideas? How would you improve your credit score? Yep.
Maintaining older accounts, maintaining a good payment history, keeping all of your accounts in good standing, avoiding closing any of your accounts, things like that.
Yep. So you think you're doing a good thing, saying, "Oh man, I'm going to get rid of all these old accounts," and it does. You think it would help, but it can cost you a few points. But I still recommend it if you're carrying 4 or 5 cards and you don't need to, because I mean, otherwise maybe that pizza that you bought in college there, you're still paying for, and it would give you indigestion if you thought about how much you paid for that pizza, over that period of time. And I think that's one thing we don't educate. Most people don't learn too much about it, or maybe the family didn't have great management skills and it just kind of passed down, or they're around a bunch of kids at school or whatever, and they don't necessarily know what they're going to do with that credit card or whatever. And I mean, how many got offers for credit cards in here? Yeah, there lies the problem. So basically, you're giving the cards out and say, "Hey, it's money," and then someone say, "I don't have to pay this back," or haha. But seriously, it's really something to, it's easy to say you're going to pay it back and then you don't, and then it can really hurt you down the road a lot more. So for example, always pay your minimum at least. Pay those minimums on time, get them there. I'm having to send it in almost a week ahead of time. Sometimes even longer because the mails are so bad and so on and so forth. So, pay that in for sure. So you want to pay the minimum balance, $10 usually it is, or some kind of fee like that. And the reason, but that really doesn't help you because it's building up. Okay, so you can't really do that too much, but at least pay that. And then the other part is figure out a way that you can pay it down or whatever from that standpoint. If you have a problem with credit, you're buying too much, you can't, you just got to have that particular item in the store, then maybe you should have a talk with yourself. Is that thing really that important? I want to have a house down the road, or I'm tired of driving this old clunker. What's more important to me, doing that, or buying $300 of clothes or something, or whatever, or being the toast of the town, taking all your friends out, and then you're the one left with the bill. So just from a standpoint of knowing what the credit score is, so pay it timely. And I've had a couple times where I was out of town or the payment got missed. Even if you miss one and they charge you some interest, if you have a good payment history, they'll probably look at it and waive it. So let's say you paid 11 straight, and by the time and whatever, and you had a balance on that thing. You wanted to try to waive the interest, that particular one, and you hadn't paid interest for like the last 10 or 11 months because you paid it exactly what they asked for, and you paid it off. Then when you have a newer one, they might waive that particular interest on that charge. I've had that waived 4 or 5 times because you can't always tell what the mail's going to do. How many have a balance on it? You don't tell me how much it is. It can be $1, okay? But how many have a balance on a credit card? Okay. What interest rate are you paying on that? Any idea? Any idea? A lot. A lot. 20+%. Come on over to my house. I'll loan you that money anytime, for that kind of interest rate. Okay? Because we talked about that last week, remember? We talked about that last time about what interest rate and the time value of money. We talked about, okay, so like it's the rule of 72. You guys remember that one? And so basically if you divide 72 by the interest rate, so if it's 20%, let's just say, that means it's 3.6 years. So if I loaned you money, then that's going to double in 3.6 years, that same number. So it's really, I can't, it's one of the highest interest rates out there. I think it should be a lot lower than that as far as the maximum. I mean, the laws in Florida basically say it can only be 18% except for credit cards. So it's very high, and you'll have a hard time getting ahead when you're financing things at 20%. People complain about the interest rates right now, on a house or whatever. That ain't near 20%. So that's the first thing you want to pay off there too. But I would say have the emergency funds first, if you can. Get that established first, and then tackle the credit card. Sometimes you can transfer balances. Maybe you get a break, transfer a balance for a period of time for maybe a year. So maybe that'll save you the 20%. Not getting into the numbers or whatever, but so because maybe some people charge their education partially that way. I bought properties with my credit card back in the day. So, I've seen some pretty large balances. I didn't keep it on there very long, fortunately, but it gets expensive. So if I had $8,000 on my credit card, at 20%, that's a lot of money. Okay, and it's a monthly kind of charge, so it gets really expensive. Okay, so first things first, the emergency fund still, $1,000 fund 2, checking, savings, and then check your score on a continuing basis, at least once a year. And next time this group's together, and if I happen to be here, you guys are all going to raise your hand when I say, who knows their credit score? It's important. It's important. I wouldn't try to drive it home if it wasn't going to be something you're going to use till you're not here anymore, till you meet our Maker. So, but it is important. It is important. Okay. How many have a balance on the credit card? We talked about that. How many pay the minimum? What are the interest rates? We took care of that already. Debit cards. We talked about buying a car last time a little bit. And so how many have a car now? Okay. Insurance, always fun, all those great things. It's the pleasure of car ownership. How many have a loan on the car? Okay. I bet you there's more, but that's okay. But it's because it's so normal. Basically it's normal. That we have an interest, we have a loan on the car, we have a loan on the house usually from those two standpoints. And if there's 2 of you, you have 2 cars usually. Because you're going in different directions to go to work to help pay for the car, to pay for the house. So if I asked what the interest rate on your loan is, what would you tell me? Somebody has a loan on the car. 6, okay? I know especially some of the credit unions you can get down to those kind of numbers, you get those things. But if you had a lower credit score, that's going to be in the higher thing, and you're probably going to only be able to buy it at certain lots. You're not going to be able to go to maybe a normal dealership, or you're like a B type loan or something like that. But so that'll help from a standpoint of when we talked about it last time. We talked about when people buy a car, what do they think about? And I told you guys this last time, so who remembers? So what are the things that are important to you when you buy a car?
The mileage.
Mileage?
You said it. I'm trying to remember. The interest rate you said as well, or and then I can't remember.
But what's most important? You're driving up, you're coming into my dealership, and you're saying, Larry, I want that red car there. It's got my eye. I want that red car right there. What are you gonna say?
How much is it?
Yeah, how much? Maybe. Okay.
Down payment?
How much down? For sure. How much a month? What do they show on TV? We can get you for nothing down and $299 a month. Okay. Did you hear anything about how much? You didn't hear how much that car was. They didn't say it was $35,000 or any kind of price at all. They don't even tell you the term, the length of term usually. They'll tell you that nothing down or $299 down or maybe it's in that fine print. I don't know about you guys, but I can't read that fine print on the bottom of that TV screen, not as fast as they say it anyways. So, but from a standpoint of I just want you to be more observant to what you're really paying. Because if they change that interest rate from 6% to 10%, and you didn't even know it, but they got the payment, but they put it maybe 2 more years of payments. See how they got you? So that's kind of why I'm telling you that. It isn't, there's the down payment and the monthly payment are important, yes. How much the thing is, how long of a term it is, are all equally important. But the ones they sell you on are those 2 things on a regular basis. That's the one you'll see on TV. So when you watch the TVs over the weekend, just see how many you see. And they're selling them, especially on Sunday mornings when they should be in church. They're all hawking those cars. But I'd say from a standpoint, oh, geez, I got a $1,000 payment on this car, but I can get this one here for nothing down and $300 a month, and but I'm paying for it for 8 years, and they're financing my car into it, and so the next thing you know, it's 8-year loan. When I started financing a car, when I bought a car originally, it was a 3-year term. Okay, so now it's gone from 3 to 5 to 8. It's almost closer to getting close to a house all the time. So that's what I want you to look out for. I want you to know how long you're paying for it. And that goes with anything you're going to buy. You buy a mobile home, you buy anything that has a payment schedule on it, whatever. You need to ask more than just the 2 questions. You need to know how long, and then how much you had to put down, how much there are other charges. Sometimes when you buy a house, for example, if you put less than 20% down, you pay what they call PMI. So now you pay extra interest rate because you only put 10% down. And that just protects the bank from bringing the loan, but see how much it costs somebody. So if you pay that down, you want to make that go away as quick as possible because that'll save you between 0.5% and 1% interest rate alone. When you finance a house, basically on a 30-year deal, you're going to pay roughly 2.5 times the value of what you purchased. So if you bought a house for $200,000, you're paying how much? $500,000 in that range of total payments. So just think about that from a standpoint. So it's just not that 200, it's how you're financing it or whatever. Some people may finance it for 15 years. And if you do it for 15, it saves a dramatic amount. Some people pay extra. You got to be careful that you calculate it right, though, because sometimes the bank doesn't calculate it right. Those are just a couple of thoughts. Things to look out financing kind of deals. You want a friend, if you're borrowing from the bank, you want a bank that you can trust, all right? Somebody you can at least talk to. It might be a different person, but at least it's somebody at that bank. And some of these people have been there 12, 15, 20 years. You usually can find some familiar faces if you've been to a bank that's the size we're talking about. If you try to go to one of the bigger boys, I really hate it because I still have to do some things at Truist because I'm on the foundation board for the Dade City Police Department, and they have an account there. And God, it irritates me every time I have to go through that drive-through window. So we all have our little, crosses to bear from the standpoint who we'll have to deal with. But from a standpoint, there are a lot of situations out there that can help you. So don't be afraid to look at different deals. When you open an account, sometimes they give you a $300 as an opening fee. Gosh, you're almost, that's part of your savings account. It's part of your emergency fund if you transfer those funds over to a thing. I know Chase has something like that. I know some others do too. Some of your smaller ones are not going to do that, but they really they do want your business. But it's getting you so you're known, so you're known. So I wanted to kind of get into housing a little bit. How many are renting now? Okay. Trust me, there's nothing bad about that. And anybody own already? Have bought a house or whatever? Okay. How many haven't bought their first house yet ever? Raised nice and Hall, so it's pretty much everybody. Okay. Well, my advice would have been to buy it like 2 years ago or 3 years ago, but that's kind of nice, Larry. That's really not a very nice thing to do. It's difficult. But I think there's possibilities still out there. There are situations where you can even rent to own. That's a possibility. I bought properties pretty much any way you've ever heard of. Rent to own, option, price. I've sold it and had an option to buy it back. There's all kinds of different ways to do it. But from a standpoint of and for first-time home buyers, there's a special program. So there's some benefits for that first home buyer. So please, if you're getting into a situation like that, don't be afraid to look into that program. It's been going on for quite some time, but it's still out there for first-time home buyers. How many are renting in a group scenario, like where there's a couple of you having to get together to do the rent? And because that's always a fun thing too. You got to make sure the other person pays. You're paying, but they're not, or And I used to live with 4 guys. When I was going to college. So that was a treat. But anyways, I think there's just a lot of different. Just be careful. And the reason I brought it up with other people and whatever like that, it's more like co-signing. Some people might co-sign a lot. Oh, maybe let's say you got your act together. So now you really are doing well, and your friend Jim is just, he's been the nicest guy to you or whatever. He's trying to buy a car, but he says, hey, can you co-sign this for me? No. Okay? You can't do it. Because I've just seen it so many times, whether it's that or loan money to someone, family or whatever, it just puts a strain on the relationship. They're better off borrowing from somebody else, going to one of the places in town or whatever like that, as opposed to doing with you, because now you not only had a financial relationship with them that could go south, but you've got a friendship or a family relationship that can go south. And it's just not a great situation. You're better off helping them, maybe taking them somewhere where they can maybe get a loan. But just don't co-sign that loan with them, because you're going to be the one, maybe left buying it, and that's going to leave a bad taste in your mouth, and it's just going to hurt your financial score, because you're going to be on that hook too. When they don't make their payment, it's going to go on that credit score goes, and that's yours. So just keep that in mind. I mean, it's good to, everything we have is his, okay? But he also expects you to live and to enjoy life and to be able to, have a good life here from a standpoint of doing that, but as opposed to I think he just kind of wants you to get your own act together, you know. And if it didn't cause grief between the family, you know, we've already seen, like in if you have a husband and wife scenario, how 50% of like the divorces end up that way because of finances. That's a perfect. That just shows you for sure that that situation is what's the word I'm looking for? Trouble. Okay. So I mean, you try to tackle as many things to get a way you're going to conquer them as best as possible. And if you're both on the same team, doesn't mean you think exactly like or whatever, but if you try to get on the same team and you have the same goals in mind, then that's, again, but please, I've just seen so many friends and so many people get in situations that are just way over their head. Because you got to remember, you know, 50% don't have $1,000, okay? So you're going to co-sign a $20,000 loan with them. Well, get ready to pay $20,000 back, okay? Because they can't make that $1,000 because they didn't do the planning you did. All right, so take care of yourself first in those areas. Then you can take care of other people. You can help feed the sick. You can help, you know, give food to the homeless or whatever. You know, we do a lot of different things with my charity and stuff like that. It's put me in the position to be able to do lots of those things that we're supposed to be doing. Okay, that's a choice at that point in time, but I'm not looking to get paid back anything. You know, when you start looking for repayment, it's going to cause a real problem for you probably. I don't know if you were here in Pastor Joel's thing the other day. I think it was under that last group of sermons. One of them was forgiveness. Whew, man, I have a real bad one. You know, it's like even though I've been successful in real estate, not all of them have been perfect. And I have one that's really a big one, and I've chased the person. The person's really, really bad, and doing everything to avoid, you know, paying it back ever and all this kind of stuff. And yet it still has the capability of doing it. I mean, they have the things, but I won't go on all the details. But it's a very hard one for me to forgive. But I'm going to have a burning party in about 3 weeks, and I'm taking the papers out there and burning them because who does it really hurt? It hurts me, you know. I've been carrying this thing around for like 15 years. A big amount. And so, and got zero payment back, yet they're living in a $1 million house, you know, and all these kind of different things and doing all kinds of things around town, property-wise or whatever, but just are not attachable. And they could care less. And so everything is in the other person's name and not the person that owes me, even though that's the brains behind the whole outfit. So you get in a situation like that. I don't want any of you to find yourself in a situation like that, where you loan the money out to somebody like that, and this was basically when the last crash hit, okay? It was real estate, you know, held on that. And so when the real estate market went really down on lots and everything, it took vacant land first. And so the vacant land kind of hit, and but I'm trying to forget. So, but I think it's really kind of important. So, you know, sometimes we have a situation. Now, if that was a relative, every time I would run into the thing or something and see that person, it probably would take a little bit of my pleasure for that day, you know. So that's kind of, you know, I've seen people that have a family thing where maybe the parents loan the money, or maybe, you know, and we're here to take care of our family. You know, don't get me wrong on that issue, but I'm talking about other people and things like that for the most part. Any questions so far? Anything we've talked about? Is it better to own or to rent? Own. Okay. My answer is it depends. Okay. So, I mean, I had a guy who's very successful. You know, I was with a banker probably maybe a year ago, and we were just driving around, and he was just talking, and he was basically saying, he says, you know, some of the people that you see might have the biggest house in the neighborhood. You know, maybe it's 5,000 square feet. You look and you say, wow, that person's really got it together. And they got a Mercedes in the front yard and a BMW in the backyard. And, they know what they're doing, right? I mean, they really got it. And I used to do some charity work in Ukraine. And so I helped an orphanage there, and I rebuilt the place like in the early 2000s. And that's one of the things to all the kids about your age. They were like sophomore, juniors in college where I was teaching. And I did that for like a 4-week kind of interval. And they would ask me, oh, but you guys have all those fancy cars there? I don't see anybody driving a Lamborghini or Ferrari up here today. But you have all these fancy cars and whatever. I said, how much do you think those things cost? And they had no idea of time. They see that car and they have this great value. So the next time I went back, and I had been there like 25 times, I took a book and showed the payments on those things are like $2,000, $2,500, if you know how you lease it or whatever kind of things. They were blown away, that people would pay those kind of things, because here's people that are making $200-300 a month, for the most part, with a college degree. So, and that's the norm in 3 countries that I compare a lot times to: Ukraine, Colombia, and the Philippines. They all make about the same amount, but they have total different government. But yet it's still about the same amount per month, and so it's very hard for them to get ahead. At least here, there are opportunities, And so don't put yourself in a pigeonhole from a standpoint of not thinking there are different ways that you can be successful. There's lots of different ways. Mine took, in the final step, I don't know if I'd ever gone would work for myself if I hadn't gotten the boot, Maybe I wouldn't have. Maybe I'd still be a mild-mannered accountant, because that's what I was. My degree was accounting back in the day. Not being in real estate, not being in sales of some kind, because sales isn't talked about at college. It's not a field like, oh, that's, people are going to be, but all the teachers don't want you to go that way. But there's different ways you could do a lot of different things to be successful. As far as getting it to owner to rent on a house, if you have that's what I was trying to get. Let me go back to one step. We talked about the 5,000 square foot house, the Mercedes and the BMWs in the drive and whatever. When I was driving around with this banker, he says, Larry, says, the people that we bank with, the people that bank with us, and it's a community bank, but it's a big community bank now. He took me around and he said, those people are going to have to work till they're 85 just to keep that lifestyle up. Okay, no, I'm not going to be working at 85, okay? I don't think anybody in this room is going to be working till they're 85. But that's what they have to do to keep that style up, because they're still leveraged up to here. You can have anything you want, probably leveraged, as long as you keep making payments, all right? When I first, some of the first people that I worked with when I got into real estate were doctors and lawyers, because that's who had the money. There wasn't a lot of other business going in Florida at that particular time. So, but they had the money. So if the guys was making that money, so if you have a doctor, for example, and he was making 150, 200 grand a year, he was spending 250 or 300 a year. All right. So they would spend more. Country club, this, that, just a different lifestyle. Had to have the best of everything from that standpoint. Had to have the latest this or so on and so forth, because they were a doctor. Okay, never been they were put up on a pedestal from a standpoint of looking up to them, and so I had like 25 doctors that were my partners in different deals, and that is the check of egos right there. Trying to work with that many doctors at one time. But found most of them were tired of being a doctor. They wanted to be in real estate, and doing that. Most of them never did, but the thing is, basically, they would spend about 125 to 150% of what they make. So how can you succeed on that? You can't. And so when you see those big houses or whatever, just remember your payments are less than theirs. It's easy to keep up with the Joneses kind of scenario syndrome, that everybody does, but you don't know that situation. Just like you don't know what problems they've got. I had we do feeding some homelessness all during COVID. We were feeding up to 1,000 families a week, PHSC and a few other places, and because people couldn't get food and couldn't get prices or and everything, just couldn't. The quantities were not there. And I remember one person that we had to actually get there. She actually drove up in a really nice car, and there, people would talk. And I just said, look, we're not here to judge. I don't care. We're not here to judge any of those people from that standpoint, because you don't know what it's like. You don't know what situation that is. You don't. You don't know. I've had so many different people. I've had charity make a difference now since 2007. So I've had people who had almost a brand new Audi SUV in the driveway, or I should say in the garage, and 3 kids. And her husband stopped making payments on the car to her, no income for food. So yeah, beautiful car to drive. Can't drive because the brakes won't work. She can't get it repaired. And now instead of even taking the kids to school, she's having to take them to the corner and then hopefully, they catch the right bus because they're not used to that part. But she can't even go to the grocery store. So, you never know what kind of situation someone's in. So I tell all the volunteers that work with us, don't judge. And, you're maybe 1 paycheck or 2 paychecks away from being in that line as well. And you might have a great car. You've been making that payment, regularly for the last 2 years. But we're not here to judge from that standpoint. And it can happen to anybody. I always tell everybody there are 2 or 3, especially if you're paycheck to paycheck, you are 2 or 3 weeks away from being in that line. Needing something, needing food, needing whatever. But sometimes it's hard to convince, especially when the person we have a lot of volunteers who are not making much money either, and they see, a big beautiful car, or something like that. But I've also had people drive up that, especially during COVID, where maybe they lost a loved one, and they're crying at the driver's wheel, So those are the things that make a charity worthwhile. When you're actually touching somebody, you're really making a difference in their life. So right now, what I do now is I do about half for real estate, and I do the other half to help run the charities. So you won't see me out there too much asking for a donation. My website's probably not even up to date very well. It's probably right there with my credit score that I haven't looked at in over a year. But it's from a standpoint of it's easier for me to do real estate than it is to go ask people for money. I don't know, just the way I'm built. But there's big need, we have a gentleman here in the place, it's Emmanuel Always. I had a truck that we used to use for all the food and whatever, we gave it to him because he's out there feeding homeless. He feeds like 70 to 80 people on a regular basis weekly. We always hear sometimes about the people who have give 10%, tithe or whatever from that standpoint. This guy takes reverse tithe, I think. I think he gives away 90% of what so much so that his wife said, hey, enough's enough. We can't continue to do that at that rate because we don't have those kind of funds. And, but I think, you find people with the right heart. There's lots of things that I think are very important for you to do. I get more, I used to get I guess was around Trump too long over the years, back in the day. I don't really agree with his stance on many things now. But basically it was The Art of the Deal. It was a book of his way back when. And, you get kind of exciting. You could put, a deal together and it's, you can put Cracker Barrel there, or you could put this there, or sell that. It builds up from a standpoint you're successful, and then that's one big thing. But I tell you, in the last almost 20 years, if it wasn't for the work I do charity-wise, that I wouldn't be driven as hard, because that's what drives me. I got 55 kids that have been adopted here in USA from Ukraine. Okay, I'm happy that they're not having to go through all the stuff that's over there right now. And some of them have kids now. Some they're in their 30s now. So because we could take them till they were up to 14. Brought family of 4 in one case. And I got them spread out over about 5 states, anywhere from Indiana down south. People ask me what's the most important thing I've done. That's the thing I treasure the most. What I was able to do for them. They have a real life. Over there, they'd be struggling if they're even be there at this point in time. The city that I worked out of over in Ukraine was the city you saw on the news all the time, the nuclear plant. So that was the one they were constantly threatening from a standpoint of doing. So, and I have friends who still to this day have their bags packed by the door if they come another 30 miles. They have to get out that quickly. And this is their only home, the only home they know. Their life savings is in that home, in that kind of scenario. So I think from a standpoint, which will give you the most satisfaction in life is your family, okay? But also, who else you can help as long as you approach on the way. Why am I here? I have some knowledge up here. Maybe it can help some of you. I'm hoping it can. Maybe you can learn from some of my mistakes, some of the things I've learned over the years. I always kind of go to these kind of things or your seminars or whatever, and if I can come out with 3 or 4 ideas that I can put together in my life, things that are going to make a difference on what I'm going to do or how I'm going to approach something, I think that's really important. Maybe look at it with a different point of view. Just things like that. I think it's really, really important that any seminar you might go to or a class that you're going to take that maybe isn't, you have to take it, or just something. If you can't get two or three things out of it that can improve, you're probably not looking at it right. Because I have a tendency to look at the positive side, but there's so many different things here. I mean, if you can't use 10 different things that I've told you tonight and use 5 or 6 of them to your benefit, then I would be shocked. Because I'm not telling you anything that, you may encounter this in 10 years, or you may have this or whatever. Something to think about. And with that, I've got I got a couple more here. And I think this was one we don't talk about enough. So everybody has some jobs they've done, right? What kind of job skills do you have? Any idea? So let's say you're going to apply for a job with me. What kind of job skills do you have? Say, I think you need a person with this kind of a job skill. Anybody? Yeah? What's that?
Like work ethic.
Work ethic, yep.
Drive.
Drive, perfect, yep. What does drive mean really though? What does it mean?
Like wanting to do good and like wanting to be persistent and keep up, show people what you can do, like basically just
Yeah.
continue.
Maybe being a self-starter too, kind of thing or whatever. Any other ideas? I got a list of 10 here, guys. That's only one.
Communication.
What's that?
Good communication.
Good communication. Yep. Efficiency. So you're trying to impress me. I'm the guy. I'm going to make the final say on I'm going to hire you or not. So those are all good points. So when you're applying for a position, just don't go on the ad. If you happen to get the interview, do a little homework what that job is going to entail online, first of all. See what you can find out about the job. And then you want to be the things you're talking about. I'm a self-starter. Show me what to do. I'll follow what I got to do, and I'm ethical, and from that standpoint. And I think the bigger ones is, what is your attitude? I remember one person I hired, she had like a 4.0 from FSU and was going to help me in the real estate office or whatever. And when it came down to it, she was worthless in the office. It must have been a foreign language. Maybe all my machines and everything were in Chinese or something. I'm not sure. But just from a practicality. So don't ignore your practical part. Don't just go in there and say, I studied this, and so I know everything. First of all, you don't know everything, okay? You're basically, how can you help him run his business or her business? That is what they're asking for. How can they run it better? Hard work, okay? Never hurt anybody. Don't be afraid to. Sometimes you're going to get, maybe abused in that time period. Maybe they take advantage, okay? That's for you to judge. Attitude, okay? We have it in relationships, the attitude's maybe not the greatest between two people. So attitude's a problem. Discipline, I think, discipline of yourself. Are you, job starts at 9. What time do you roll in? 9, 8:50, 9:30, I remember when I was watching something, and a person said, well, the job, I have to be here by 10 in the morning for that job. Oh, this isn't going to work out for me, So you got it. That person has an office to run, and so from a standpoint, those things are important. Doing extra. That doesn't mean you have to work, an extra hour or something like that. But you might have a project that they're trying to crank out, and he doesn't, 5 o'clock, and you got hit by the door, or the wind, gushed in or whatever. And excellence. Those things are all choices that you make. You make a choice for hard work. You make a choice for your attitude. You make a choice for your discipline. You make a choice of doing extra. You make a choice for excellence. Not one time did I say, oh, you're not smart enough for the job. We didn't talk about intelligence. Those things can overcome a lot of things that you may think, oh, she's smarter than I am. That's why she got the job. Once you get the job, that's just part of the battle. It's keeping that job, because you're going to wear out that person's welcome. If you don't have any of those things, he's going to say, 30-day trial's over. I got to go some other direction. So keep those in mind. Hard work, attitude, discipline, doing extra, excellence, and self-starting is really good. Self-starting is really good for you to get in that position from a standpoint. If I'm in business for myself. If I wasn't a self-starter, nobody's going to pay me anything. So you've got to be a self-starter. It's one thing to say, I'm rolling about 10 a.m. Maybe I didn't have any 8 o'clock classes, so I don't have to roll up anymore. Just something to think about. Use it to your advantage. Don't think about, they're taking advantage of me. Is it making me a better worker so that I can have people maybe under me, that I can be more of a team player so I can understand some of the things that the other people are going through. And because the other thing is, are you a team player? Or are you going to be the one that they got to cater to keep you happy? Because it's going to get old, just like in any situation. Are you mentally strong? Who's mentally strong in here? He's mentally strong. I knew that one was coming up. So I got a list here. What do you think is on it? I got 6 things mentally strong people do. Any ideas? What do you do, Joe? Makes you know that you can handle it.
Work out in the rain.
That'll do it. One of the things they do, they embrace change. A lot of people, change happens and they think, I can't. Oh no, I can't do it. No. This is the way it's got to be. No, they're not going to grow as a company. You're not going to grow as a person. The business is not going to grow. So it's a beneficial thing to change. So they welcome challenges. They move on. They don't waste time feeling sorry for themselves. The boss doesn't want to hear you complain all day. You might have had a bad day. My bookkeeper came in. She called me yesterday, and she said, I hurt my leg because she had to pull the hamstring. She was out there. She's like 45, and she pulled her hamstring playing kickball. I said, "How old do you think you are?" I'm just kidding her. But she's paying the price. So she couldn't come in yesterday, obviously, and she didn't even know she was going to have to, what it was, from a standpoint. So she came in today. She iced it down a little bit or whatever, and we're pretty flexible, kind of an office scenario. But I think from a standpoint, things happen. So don't waste time feeling sorry for themselves or whatever like that. We did, cater to her or whatever, but she jumped right in there too. I think when you show people that, they see that they can do more, you know. I don't know what tomorrow will end up being. We'll probably have a little more. And I know she's still in pain, a lot of pain. So they stay happy. They don't waste energy on things they can't control. That's the hard thing for me. I used to try to, maybe a control freak a little bit. I don't know, but you try to control everything. You know, you're doing this real estate thing. You got to control all the different parts of it or whatever. But I've had a lot of times when, you know, I've had to sit back and I say, you know, I don't know what to do here. You know, I don't know the answer. I don't know where, you know, should I do this or should I do that? So I put it up to God and I ask Him. It's in your hands. You know, whatever way it comes out, I can handle it. But help me here, you know, because you can't be expected at any age. So we're talking about something that I've done fairly recently too. You know, so I mean, it's not, you're not going to have every situation covered with your knowledge. You know, and sometimes you're just going to say, you know, I'm not sure how to handle this particular situation. Okay. I lost my son at he was 19, and it was by suicide. And it was a very difficult time. No warnings, no nothing. And he was away at school. So you're not prepared for anything like that as a parent or anything from that standpoint. The pain that you kind of go through is, you know, I never was depressed. I was always very positive, as I think you guys can pretty much tell. You know, always kind of pretty positive from that standpoint. But there were times when I didn't get out of bed till 4 o'clock in the afternoon after that time. So you never know the route God has. Like I told you, it doesn't all go this way. So you got to find help, got to find support, got to be there for others. Helps you get through your ideas and things that you're going through. So God and I had a lot of conversations. We still do, fortunately. But it was a tough time, and it's something you never get over. And just from, you never know what somebody is going through because you're not in their shoes. You never know what they're really facing. When I would go to work, even after, you know, a few months, you know, or something like that, I would go to work and people would think, oh, you're doing okay. You know, yeah. You know, it's just, you get this facial glare kind of thing, like with a half smile. And that was about as close as you could get to reality at that point in time. So with all the things on mental health and everything like that, I think it's really urges you to be mentally strong, okay, to be able to handle it. Doesn't mean you can handle that particular situation. You know, I remember at the funeral, I had 10 offers for pills. This will help you through it. That's what we take. That's what I take. That's what we take. Tons of offers for that. Just to give you, and then we seem to have a pill for everything. Well, that doesn't help you handle the issue itself. Doesn't mean you don't have to take certain things to help you through certain times. But I think we rely too much on some of it if it isn't more medical. But I think it is, you know, and I see it, I help at PHSC, some of the things, we're trying to put chapels out there now, which is pretty off the chart to put the chapels in a public university. But we're working on it, and hopefully we can get there. But one of the things we talk about is, you know, mentally. Everybody says, what happens when there's a shootout at one of the schools? Oh, you know, it's a mental issue, but nobody talks about mental issues, you know. But we've all had them, you know, maybe small ones, big ones, you know, different issues, things we have a hard time handling and finally get over it, or family members that we know, or people we've had at school or whatever. So I think from that standpoint, don't be afraid to talk about it, okay? It's worse when you keep it inside. Nobody knows that you have an issue or whatever like that. So that's kind of why, that's my personal way of handling this thing. just being able to talk about it or whatever from that standpoint. It's not easy to talk about. Mentally strong. They are kind, fair, and unafraid to speak up. We could do that a little more in this room too. They are willing to take calculated risks. Okay, so if you want to get ahead in life, you're going to have to take some risks. I hate to break it to you, but you're going to have to. Anybody who is successful out there on their own has had some risks. People who have gone out and quit this job and to start over on this job over here, that's a risk. You know, not afraid to leave their comfort zone. Okay? When Joe came here from, where was it, Texas? From Texas, and when he came here, he knew he found a pretty good guy, but from a standpoint, going into the unknown, we have a new president of the university over at PHSC, and he came from Texas also. I think Texas A&M, I think. So he came from there, and they didn't give him one person there to help blend him into the thing. There was no kind of like committee to help, steer him. It was kind of eye-opening for me because the guy is coming into a whole new area, doesn't know the area, doesn't know the school, you got 5 campuses, crazy stuff. And, but I think that's but he took a risk to come here in the first place. And so anything worthwhile, when you sign your name on that mortgage for that house, you're taking a risk, you got to pay it back, but you're gonna have a nice house, raise your family. 30 years from now, they'll come back and they'll say, oh, remember, I think I broke that handle off of the banister or something back in the day, or just places you're gonna have memories and everything from that particular spot. So keep that in mind. Risk is, I've taken some crazy risks in business. I wouldn't say crazy, but I mean, places where you are putting more things at risk. It's the only way you can get the particular loan or whatever, so you have to take educated risk. And they celebrate other people's success. Okay, so on me, I'm kind of a competitive guy. So, I've seen when you're competing with somebody like there's another realtor or whatever like that, it just kicks into all my sports things and so on and so forth. So I always, I never resented, and that's what the next one is, you don't resent the success of another. So you're always wishing somebody else success, but from a standpoint you say, geez, I wish I'd have got that, or I wish that would have happened to me, or things like that. Don't be afraid to celebrate other people's success. Trust me, it will come back to you. It doesn't seem like it would initially or whatever, but it does. So don't resent the success of others. But those are the 6 things. They move on. They don't waste time feeling sorry for themselves. They embrace change. They welcome challenges. They stay happy. They don't waste energy on things they can't control. They are kind, fair, unafraid to speak up. They are willing to take calculated risks, and they celebrate other people's successes. And Larry, they don't resent the success of others. It took me a long time to do that because when you're such a competitive person, I always played hard to win. It's kind of hard. It's kind of hard. Okay, so the last one I have is kind of a whole. It covers life. Okay, so this one here. There are 10 ways to love. All right. And I guess now that I have your attention, I probably woke up a few people with those kind of comments, but there's 10 ways. And basically when you're listening to these 10 ways, you can use it in a relationship. You can use it in your work. Think about the things that I'm going to be saying here, these 10 things, and see if you couldn't use it even here from that standpoint. So the first one is listen without interrupting. Okay? I talk more than I listen, I guess it just comes to the nature of the beast. Sometimes I wish I didn't. I wish I listened at least 2/3 more than I speak. And why? You're going to give me so much more information that I could use and need and to help if I'm trying to help you, or if I'm trying to, than if I'm just talking and not listening at all. So, very important one. Listen without interrupting. And don't be trying to think about what you're going to say. Stop, and then take a breath, then come in. Let that person talk. Let them talk first, too. Speak without accusing. You know, I think a lot of times we get in a relationship and you first thing about, boom, you accuse somebody, you did this. You remember when you did that 15 years ago? I mean, you know, those kind of things you accuse. That's going to hurt you in the workplace. That's going to hurt you at home. That's going to hurt you so many different places. Give without sparing. By the way, the first one was Proverbs 18. Listen without interrupting. The next one, speak without accusing, James 1, verse 19. And then the next one is give without sparing. That's Proverbs 21:26. Pray without ceasing. So lots of times we pray that, oh, did I interrupt this here? Somebody wasn't praying for me right here. Sometimes we pray, oh, God, I need this really bad. I need this break or whatever. And then he does it. Oh, I don't want to pray for maybe 2-3 weeks. You know, that's not what it's about. Okay? I think it's just important to pray, you know, and not be afraid to say it any way you want to say it. That's what it comes from you. Everybody's different. Answer without arguing. How do I answer somebody without arguing? Don't you think that would make more sense? So if I get in a situation but I come back as an argument, you just escalated everything up. Proverbs. Most of these are from Proverbs, so that's pretty good. So you keep that in mind. Share without pretending. How many pretenders have we run into over the years? That's what I used to do when I was trying to pretend I was okay. And I went back to work. And so I'd go there and pretend that I'm doing fine when you're not. So, but, you know, share without trying to pretend to somebody. You're actually trying to really share with somebody. You're really trying to relate to that person. And you're not afraid, you're not, you know, just putting on this fake, you know, if you're sincere about it, then do it. If you're not sincere about it, don't do it. Period. If you can't be sincere about anything like that, then it's better not to do it. Enjoy without complaint. Now, this can go in the workplace there. You know, enjoy the moment. Usually, how many times have we heard something? Oh, yeah, it was a great thing, but, you know, great thing, I did this, but, you know, enjoy the moment, okay? It's a great event. But we want to keep talking. We want to keep talking. We're not done talking or speaking about what we want to say. Trust without wavering. So somebody can depend on you if you're there for them. And then, you know, if they told you something about themselves, and then you can't really necessarily, you know, you think, boy, that surprised me about that person. He can't trust you. They can't trust you anymore. You know, they don't trust in you. You're losing that trust. So you got to be there for people even through the ups and downs. Don't be afraid to be there, especially if you're trying to help somebody through a difficult situation or time. Here we go again. Forgive. It always comes back to these words. I penalize myself there. But forgive without punishing. So this one here, being able to forgive. I know forgiving's hard, you know. Forgiving is so hard in some areas. I mean, I don't even want to talk about the ones that are really kind of tough. But it could be, you know, you're not going to get anywhere without forgiving, because it's going to come up again and again and again. And if you want something a relationship to work, or if you want a situation in the office to get over, talk about it. Go back and answer without arguing, and go up at some of the others. And I'll be happy to furnish this list to some people too. You know, if we had that one list going around, anybody wants that, I'll be happy to do that. And the final one is promise without forgetting. You know, you promise something. I always make a thing, if you promise something, you do it. You find a way to do it. Or you better have a very good reason not to, you know. But that person's depending on your promise, You know, you said you're gonna do certain things. You're gonna be in the office at certain things. You're going to be there to pick up a friend, and you don't show up. You're gonna, it's important. So those 10 ways I think are very interesting from a standpoint of life, because you can take any aspect of your life and apply it. You can apply it to every one of your situations, relationship-wise today, friend, romantic, whatever kind of relationship you have, work-wise, members of church-wise. You don't know, when people come here to church, you don't know what people have faced that day. You don't know what they've gone through just to get there. You don't know that, maybe, well, a zillion things. But I think those are the main items I have. I think that's the best way I'm going to end it right there on that. Those are kind of the important parts. Anybody have any questions on those items? I tried to give you things on, not so much just on money, okay, because money's only one aspect of life. It's a necessary one. It's one that's going to help you do the things you want to do and do the things you feel a need you want to do and to help. So it covers a gamut of things. But I think it's really important to understand how other people perceive you, how other people perceive you when you're in the workplace, how they perceive you when you walk into church, how they perceive you when you're driving down the street next to them and somebody cut them off, all kinds of things, okay? Just the common courtesies in that standpoint, but that's about all I have for tonight.